Hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. My name is Talal, and welcome to Popcorn and Soda, the show where we discuss all things movies, pop culture, and so much more. As always, I want to thank each and every one of you for making me a small part of your day. Dune Part 2. Today, we're going to be breaking down my most anticipated movie of 2024, which just happened to land within the first couple of months. If you watched my previous video last year of the movies that I'm most excited for, this was number one on the list. So I had the chance to watch it opening weekend in IMAX. What did I think of Dune Part 2? Wow. I've never said the word masterpiece when it comes to describing a movie or a film, but if I had to say that word for a movie going experience I've ever had, not necessarily as the movie itself, but just the experience, this is as close to a masterpiece that I've ever felt in terms of my movie going experience at a theater. I don't even know where to begin. This movie was a ride. It wasn't just a movie where it's just you're watching or sitting down. The highs and the lows of this film, the different tonal shifts, the film itself, the music, Denis Villeneuve, Hans Zimmer, Timothee Chalamet, Austin Butler. Mind blown. I honestly don't know where to begin with this except for just the first thing that came to my mind when the credits rolled was just wow. I just witnessed quite possibly the best film I've ever seen in a movie theater. And I have to give so much credit to Denis Villeneuve for what he pulled off in this because everyone knows the sequels, 9 times out of 10, are not as good as the original. It's just one of those rules, right? You'll have the odd exceptions, The Dark Knight, Godfather Part 2, Back to the Future 2, The Two Towers. Add Dune Part 2 to that list because this movie was just amazing. It was a cinematic experience that I truly feel needs to be viewed by everyone who watches movies in a movie theater because you guys know my love of the theater. And I don't necessarily believe that every movie needs to be watched in a theater, but a movie like Dune Part 2 is made for the biggest screen possible and the biggest sound and just that atmosphere within a theater. So let's break down what I liked about the film, things that didn't really connect with me, and overall my thoughts of what I feel you should do if you're considering watching Dune. So, as I mentioned, number one, Denis Villeneuve. Self-admittedly, I'm not the biggest Denis Villeneuve fan prior to Dune Part 2. I enjoyed a lot of his films. I really did. I think Prisoners is amazing. I thought Blade Runner 2049 was a good experience. I personally wasn't a big fan of the film because I didn't have that connection to the original, but it's hard not to appreciate what Denis does on the big screen. And Dune 1, I enjoyed Dune Part 1. I actually did. I wasn't over the top about the story of it because I thought it was a very much so an introduction, which looking back at it, of course, it sets up this world of Arrakis and this story of Dune, which has been known as one of the most filmable movies, one of the most least adaptable books to films ever. But Denis painted that story and that canvas for us to dip in. So Dune Part 1, I loved Hans Zimmer's score, which, won him an Oscar. I love Hans Zimmer. It was just such a character in the story. And then, of course, Timothée Chalamet, who I truly believe is going to be this generation's superstar actor, like the DiCaprios of the past. So I like Dune Part 1. Going into Dune Part 2, I had so much expectations because I truly felt that the stakes are going to be higher and just with the casting by itself. So big respect to Denis Villeneuve, who went out and got Austin Butler as Phaedra, who we'll get into, Christopher Walken, Florence Pugh, this movie is just Lea Seydoux. Like, this movie is a who's who, and that's going right into my second favorite part of this movie, and that is the cast. Because this may be the most stacked cast I've ever seen in a movie ever, right? Like, it truly is a who's who. You've got the returning Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Zendaya, Josh Brolin, Javier Bardem, and then on top of that, everyone that I mentioned. This cast is stacked. And hey, an all-star like Denis Villeneuve, he plays with all-stars, and that's why he got some of the best actors in the industry today. So the cast all brought so much to this film. So much. And we're going to start with Austin Butler as Fade Rotha, who quite possibly is one of my favorite actors right now, because ever since Elvis, I've been such a massive fan, even before that with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where I just loved his portrayal of Fade Rotha. It was this like punk rock Harkonnen for the Baron in terms of his nephew, and you know that this guy is just, he doesn't play by any rules. And I loved his chemistry with Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron, of course, who is just killer again in this film. His chemistry with Dave Bautista, who again returned in this film as the Harkonnen leader as well. And I loved his chemistry with those Harkonnens, as well as his chemistry with Timothée Chalamet in the film as well. So big respects to that. Florence Pugh, amazing actress. I enjoyed her role in this as well. Just my favorite like trio had to be of Zendaya, Timothée Chalamet, and Javier Bardem, who plays Stilgar, who again is one of those characters who believes in the prophecy of the Messiah coming in, and Timothée Chalamet, of course, as Paul Atreides. So I love that. And Shani and Paul's relationship in the movie, it's really challenged, and it's really brought to a lot of different tipping points throughout the movie where a lot goes down, and we'll talk a bit more about that as the review goes along here. So the cast, top notch, and I think Timothée Chalamet really one-upped himself from Dune Part 1, because that was the introduction to Paul Atreides, versus now we're getting to know Paul more, who is having that, struggle within himself if he should, go after this so-called prophecy and become the Messiah and save the Freemen from the Harkonnens and everyone, to give them a free world, versus also at the same point not wanting to do that and wanting to just fight alongside with them instead of being a leader. So that was a very, I think Timothy just killed it in that, because it allowed a lot of just solid acting, and it brought so many more layers and depth to Paul Atreides from the first movie, which I absolutely enjoyed and loved. So the cast, as I mentioned, just amazing. The story of this film is drawn out as this epic, and that's what I love about the story. I really feel that you need to watch the first one, of course, to really enjoy the second film, because there's so much building blocks in the first movie that are done that need to be, experienced to be able to watch and enjoy the second one. But this movie in many ways felt like the Odyssey from the very beginning, where we pick up right after Dune Part 1, in which Timothée Chalamet and Rebecca Ferguson, Lady Jessica, of course, they're on this journey with the Freemen after Timothy proved himself. Paul proved himself by fighting to the death with Jamis, who's going to be another big character in the next film, of course. And in this film is from a lot of the flashbacks in Dune Part 1. So it picks up right after there. But this movie is a 2.5 hour long movie. And I personally did not feel bored or tired at any pace. That's just me personally. And I love the odyssey of where Paul starts in the beginning of the film as to where he ends out at the very end, because this is a war film. This is a film about the Harkonnens versus the Freemen, and then Paul not fully realizing his destiny as the Messiah, but Paul taking the steps to get to the point by the end of the film where we have a very clear picture of what Dune Part 3 is taking us to. So I really enjoyed the story because not just Paul's arc in the story, but Lady Jessica, who plays Paul's mother as Rebecca Ferguson from the first Dune, she had a great arc in this as well, in which she becomes the Reverend Mother. And there is so many different arcs to even Zendaya's character, to Chani, and to Fade Rotha, and the Baron, the Harkonnen. They are struggling after Dune Part 1, in which they are getting beat in these battles by the Freemen. And I love the arc of the Harkonnen as well as the humans, Paul's story, the Freeman story. And there's a couple of really big twists and turns in this film. There's a really big one near the end of the film, which, again, this is a spoiler-free review, so I won't get into, but I'm pretty sure you all know what I'm talking about. So please do comment below and share with me your thoughts on that big twist. I loved the story of it. The twists were great, but most importantly, the last two big positives that I had. Number one, I'm going to start off with Greg Fraser's amazing cinematography of this film. I can honestly say this movie had some of the best cinematography I've ever seen in a film. Some of those hero shots, the action shots in which Paul is, guiding his new army of the Fremen, Paul and his speeches, the overall battles, the dune, just sand everywhere, and just how he captured a lot of the amazing scenes in this film, especially the sandworm scene, which was just, again, such a heroic scene in which Paul realizes that he has skills and the Fremen are all like, how did this guy do it? And that was like the first time in the movie where a lot of people started to really believe Stilgar, who is this, he's almost Paul's number one supporter, where he truly believes he is the Messiah and he is here to come save and assist the Freemen in living in a free world. So I just love those hero shots, those iconic imagery in this film. You can create at least 10 different posters from the shots of this film. And that is just a massive respect to Greg Fraser, who captured this film magically. Now, the very last thing I'm going to talk about that I really enjoyed in this film is Hans Zimmer's score, because it was a very different score than the first film. The first Dune relied heavily on the score. We all know the score, the Oscar-winning score, in which that was a character in the film where you had specific scenes where that scream of that lady comes on, that Dune theme comes on in those hero shots. In Dune Part 2, it was a bit more subtle, in which allowed the characters to breathe more, and the score was also more so a companion rather than a main character like in the first one. It was there in a lot of the big scenes, like in the first Dune, but it didn't overwhelm you, in which that score comes on every 5 minutes or not. It was a very soft and subtle score, and that's what I really enjoyed, because this movie is a very tragic movie in many ways, and that score amplifies those small, softer scenes, especially the ending, which, again, no spoilers, but I personally enjoyed the ending of this film because it sets up Dune Part 3, but also ends up in a bit of a downer, because it reminded me a lot of The Dark Knight, where Batman takes responsibility of all the deaths that Harvey Dent, killed. And it ends on a downer where it's like the hero's journey continues, but at what cost? And the cost in this film was that and his relationship between Chani. And it's definitely, again, no spoilers, but the very last 5 minutes of the movie were very deep, where I totally dug it. It worked for me. Again, as I mentioned, this movie is quite possibly the best movie going experience I've ever had because of all of those reasons. And again, Denis Villeneuve, he is quite possibly the best visual cinema movie teller, filmmaker today. I always believe that Christopher Nolan is just, he's the guy that just is above everyone else. But Denis Villeneuve, he's right up there with Christopher Nolan, if not close, because what Denis does with visuals is just something that even Christopher Nolan really doesn't do as much, is where he makes the visuals talk. And that's what I love about Denis Villeneuve is that, being a fellow Canadian, I'm so proud of all the amazing work that he has done. And he continues to push the sci-fi genre forward. So Denis Villeneuve, all the respect in the world for you, because as someone who enjoyed your films to now someone who is loving your films. And Dune Part 2 did that. So I'm always fair in my criticism or critique of a film because not every film is perfect. This is to me the perfect movie going experience because of the things that I mentioned. But I wouldn't necessarily say this was the greatest movie I ever watched, but it's a damn good movie. Some of the things that maybe didn't work for me were little things that I can't even really complain about because in the grand scheme of things, it didn't impact my love of the film by any means. I personally didn't think Christopher Walken was required for the Emperor. I just didn't feel that gravitas of the Emperor from Christopher Walken, and he's a great actor, but for whatever reason, it just didn't connect with me. And that's okay. Maybe you guys loved it, and that's great. Movies all subjective, guys. You know what I say always. Art is in the eye of the beholder. I also am a massive fan of Dave Bautista. I think he is the best wrestler turned actor because he really commits to his craft and he really does a lot of dramatic roles. So I love Dave Bautista. I have so much respect for that human. But I kind of felt like his character was downplayed in this film because from this mass psycho killer he was in the first movie, he kind of became a frail, weak character. And maybe that's a story point that as he saw Fade Rotha getting more and more power, and he's his younger version of himself almost, and the Baron's taking more liking to him, it almost showed the weakness of Bautista's character as the Harkonnen in this film. And I just felt that there could have been more, in which Bautista, especially in his fight with Josh Brolin as character, I really felt that they could have had a more drawn out fight versus, what happened. So again, very minor little, not even complaints, critiques, if anything. But it in no way, shape, or form impacted my viewing of this film. I honestly walked out of this film. I watched it with my brothers, and the second I finished the movie, I turned to my brother and I said, wow, this may have been a masterpiece, may have been the best movie going experience. And it kept me at the edge of my toes this whole movie. And I don't remember ever watching a movie that's almost 3 hours long that kept me that invested throughout the whole movie. This movie to me is a cinematic experience. It's not just a film. It's an experience that I think any film goer needs to watch and experience while it's in the theaters, because this movie it takes the stakes that much higher from Dune Part 1, and now I cannot wait for Dune Part 3 to see what happens next. So you guys know me, I don't rate movies on a star basis or a number or anything like that. Art is in the eye of the beholder. Something that I like, you may not. And something that you like may not resonate with me, and that's perfectly okay because art is in the eye of whoever watches it. So with me, it's always one of the three options. Is this a movie going experience, a movie theater movie you need to watch? Is this stream it at home when it comes out? Or is this a rainy day film where you don't know what to watch? You're kind of just doing other things. You put on your streaming app of choice and just put a movie on in the background. I think you guys all know what I'm going to say. This is the definitive movie going experience that I would recommend for anyone. I truly mean that, and I've never said that ever for any of my reviews. This is the definitive experience to watch in a movie theater because it amplifies the sound, it amplifies the screen, the image, the story, the experience. you need to go watch Dune Part 2 in a movie theater. IMAX, 70 millimeter IMAX, even if possible. But you need to do yourself a favor and watch this film on the biggest screen possible, because this movie is like nothing I've ever experienced. And I just thank you, Denis, for creating such a visual experience for me. The cast, the story, Warner Brothers, legendary, because this movie was just epic. And the Odyssey continues in Dune Part 3, and I just cannot wait to see Dune Part 3 Messiah. And I honestly will go back and watch this in the movie theaters at least 2 more times. At least. I didn't get a chance to watch it in 70 millimeter IMAX because there's only so many actual theaters in Toronto that where it's showing. So I didn't get a chance to do that. I did watch it in an IMAX screening, which is still an amazing experience. But my next screening will definitely be in the 70 millimeter, and I'll definitely pull out a review on that for you guys. The differences between the 70 millimeter and the IMAX version of the screen. So there you have it, guys. That was my review of Dune Part 2. What did you guys think of the movie? I would love to hear your thoughts. Did you enjoy it as much as I did? Did it not work for you? Please comment below. I'm so curious to hear what you all thought. And as always, please remember to like, share, subscribe, click that notification bells for all of my new videos. And that was my review of Dune Part 2.